What's up, guys? Welcome to DeathGroundReviews. Today I want to discuss another subgenre. This is another favorite of mine, and it might be the one people most readily identify when they think of the horror genre. I'm talking about supernatural horror. So what is a supernatural horror story? My understanding is these are stories that take place in the ordinary world, our world, with people like me or you. And these characters encounter something of the extraordinary or the fantastic, some otherworldly entity. So it may be a cursed object, a ghost, a werewolf, or an infestation of vampires. And this otherworldly entity, impinges upon the ordinary world. And these characters have to encounter it and battle it and are in conflict with it. It's interesting to know that Tim Wagner mentions in his book, Writing in the Dark, that there should only be one entity of the supernatural depicted in a supernatural horror story. He emphasizes that if too many supernatural entities, too many differing supernatural entities play a role in a story, a couple things can happen. One, you can risk losing the viewer because it might be harder for them to suspend disbelief with multiple differing elements of the supernatural. And two, at some point you cross the line into the fantasy genre if there are too many differing supernatural elements. However, he did clarify you can have, an infestation of one type of supernatural entity. Maybe that's vampires. For example, Stephen King's novel Salem's Lot. Or you could have like a pack of werewolves. And it would still be a supernatural horror tale. I thought that was an interesting point. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on the matter of that. It's one of the first examples that pops in my mind when I think of the supernatural horror story. And this is kind of the ultimate horror story, is Stephen King's novel Pet Sematary. For those of you that don't know the story, so the basic idea is there's the Creed family, and they move into the town of Ludlow, Maine. And the street by their house is busy with traffic. There's these big trucks that come rumbling along. And a lot of neighborhood pets get killed on this road. And so some neighborhood kids in the woods out behind their house, they created a pet cemetery to bury all their pets after they die. And but beyond that, deeper in the woods, is another burial ground. And this one's a creepy place, man. What happens is if you bury something there, it comes back to life. And when it comes back, man, it is just not right. The tagline for the story is sometimes dead is better. And within the context of this story, that's certainly true. It's an interesting book about just the overwhelming power of grief and the cost of grief. And King described it as the scariest novel he had ever written. He said that, as he was writing it, he just constantly felt so uneasy and just this wiry feeling the whole time. But you can clearly see, the supernatural element in this story. It's this burial ground that resurrects the dead in sort of a cursed and twisted manner. What also makes this story as effective as it is the well-developed characters, because you become so invested in the Creed family and the friendly old man, Judd Crandall, that, the impact is so much more powerful, as you reach the climactic moments. But yeah, Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Definitely check out that book if you haven't yet. Another personal favorite of mine is Hell House by Richard Matheson. So this novel, it's about a team of researchers who investigate, what is considered one of the most haunted houses known to man. And the lead doctor, Dr. Barrett, he packs up like all this scientific gear, and he brings along with him two psychic mediums, and to aid in his investigation. And yes, some hellish, strange, supernatural stuff just starts to happen, and it gradually unravels their sanity, and, like you do in a tale like this. So I absolutely loved, though, the scientific angle in this story. it really added to the sense of mystery and adventure, but it also kind of gives you this, it gives the characters, but also you, the reader, this false sense of security. You know, you're going in there with feeling like you're prepared. You've got the, you know, this high-tech, best technology you could get your hands on. But despite that, everything goes haywire anyway. You know, their sanity unravels anyway. And so it really adds to that sense of suspense. But, there's a scene in the novel that involves a steam room. And it'll just make your skin crawl, man. I remember after I read the novel, I went and visited a steam room. And the whole time, I just kept thinking about that scene. And I kept wondering, man, is there something that's going to emerge from the floor and just, you know, gobble me up? It was creepy. But yeah, Hell House by Richard Matheson. Just a great supernatural horror novel. Definitely check out that one. And there are so many great supernatural horror movies out there. It's hard really even to scratch the surface. One I recently watched and even reviewed on my channel was Talk to Me. That was a great one. A memorable one for me is The Ring. I saw that as a teenager. I mean, it just scared the hell out of me, man. There's the one I want to mention, though, is Poltergeist. This came out in, 1982. It starred Craig T. Nelson. He plays the father in the movie. But I wanted to mention this one because it's kind of the first horror movie I ever watched. It's the movie that planted the seed of interest for me in the horror genre. And so, you know, the basic idea of the story, it's about the Freeling family. And they end up communing with ghosts through the television set. And at first, you know, the ghosts are friendly and they're kind of playful. But eventually they become menacing. And the daughter, Carol Ann, she ends up going missing, and the family has to turn to a parapsychologist and an exorcist for help. You know, it's been a long time since I've seen the film. I really need to give it a rewatch, you know, and kind of give it a more complete review. But there are some memorable moments. I remember there's a scene of face peeling. I think it's the father. He looks in the mirror and he hallucinates about just ripping the flesh off of his face. And I mean, it horrified me pretty good when I saw that scene as a kid. And also the parapsychologist lady, so is played by Zelda Rubinstein. She was just eerie in the film because she had just this childlike voice. You know, and I remember finding her kind of eerie and disturbing throughout the film. But yeah, it's just a fascinating adventure. Poltergeist. But I'm surprised that movie got a PG rating, too. You know, back then they didn't have the PG-13 rating. You know, and so it wasn't hard enough to go R. But, you know, they didn't have that in-between space. You know, it surprises me with a lot of films, like the movie Jaws. It was rated PG, you know, but back in 1975, they didn't have the PG-13 either, you know. In reality, that's probably what it'd be rated today if it were to come out today, but it wasn't until, you know, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom that they finally created the PG-13 rating. But yeah, anyway, Poltergeist. Check that one out if you haven't yet. That's a great film. Again, I need to watch it again and give it a more complete review. But here's some other great supernatural horror movie mentions. So, you know, like The Conjuring 2013, The Omen, Ghost Watch. That's another one we reviewed on the channel. It's got kind of this documentary feel to it, and it was a lot of fun. Late Night with the Devil. This is one I've seen people talking about a lot on Threads. That's another great one to check out. I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds really good. But yes, guys, supernatural horror. Not only is it fun to read and watch, it's also a fun subgenre to try to write in. It's a fun challenge to maintain, you know, the verisimilitude, to maintain those details of the ordinary world, so that when, you know, extraordinary things start to happen, you know, doing so gradually, the viewer is still grounded enough in reality to be able to suspend disbelief. there's kind of a fine line there sometimes in that gradual reveal in such stories, and it's a fun challenge. But anyway, guys, that concludes my discussion of the supernatural horror story. And let me know in the comments some of your favorite books and movies of the supernatural horror subgenre. And this is DeathGroundReviews, the monster that devours horror, suspense, and all those things of the fantastic. And I'll see you next time.